Welcome to Grandma's Story Time. Today we're going to be meeting up with some special friends in a book called The Magical Flying Hippopotamus. Let's begin. A long time ago, in a land far, far away, lived a beautiful princess. Princess Audrey lived with her little brother Prince Lonnie, her mummy Queen Kirsten, and her daddy King Jonathan in the land of Inverleigh. It was a magical place of fairy tale creatures large and small. The chickens laid magic eggs, the sheep all spoke their own language, and there were puddles to play in and rainbows to chase. Queen Kirsten announced, "This is the best kingdom in the land." King Jonathan agreed, "And we have the best of everything." But Princess Audrey had a faraway look in her eye. "What do you think, my princess?" asked the king. Audrey narrowed her eyes as if she was seeing something magical on the horizon. "Well," she began, "I truly love all my toys, and I love watching TV and looking at books, and I love helping Mummy with Lonnie and collecting eggs and helping you feed the sheep." Audrey sighed a deep sigh and continued, "But what I really, really want more than any of those things is a magical flying hippopotamus." A smile crept across her face as she imagined the wonderful creature. "A magical flying hippopotamus?" asked the Queen in amazement. "Preposterous," replied the King. "Even with all our riches, a magical flying hippopotamus is far too difficult to find." That night, as they tucked her into her bed, the King and Queen wished her sweet dreams. And dream she did. As she strolled through the garden of her dreamland, she saw something especially bright shining in the sunlight. The closer she got, the brighter it became. She had just bent down to investigate when the golden shafts of light turned around and said, "Excuse me, it's rude to stare at somebody's rear end." Princess Audrey stumbled and fell over backwards in surprise. "Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't know what you were. And I certainly didn't know that I was staring at your rear end." She stood up and brushed off her clothes and then turned back to the golden creature. "Who are you? And what are you?" "Allow me to introduce myself. I am a most rare golden-tipped echidna." And he bowed very low and graciously. "And my name is Master Spike. And who might you be?" "I'm Princess Audrey," she replied, and did a little curtsy. Master Spike gasped and bowed even lower. "My lady, please forgive me. I had no idea you were a princess. What can I do to help you today?" Princess Audrey sat down next to the golden echidna and sighed. "Well," she began, "I really have a great life, a lovely family, really fun toys, and I live in such a magical place, but I am missing one very special thing." "Oh?" quizzed Master Spike. "And what is that?" "My very own magical flying hippopotamus," replied Princess Audrey. "Ah, magical flying hippopotamus, eh? Yes, they certainly are hard to find," declared Master Spike as he carefully stroked the spikes on his chin. "Let me see what I can do." And he scurried down a burrow in the garden. Audrey sat and waited, and waited, and waited. Soon she heard the Queen calling her for dinner. She took one more look into the burrow, but only saw lots of black dirt and not a sign of Master Spike. She followed the Queen, who had Prince Lonnie beside her, and went inside to a lovely dinner with the King. "And what did you get up to today, my princess?" asked the King. "Well, I found a most rare golden-tipped echidna in the garden, and he's going to see if he can find me a magical flying hippopotamus," announced Princess Audrey excitedly. Well, is he now? Chuckled the king. Don't you believe me? Asked Audrey. Well, of course I do. This is your dream, and you can dream whatever you desire, my child. A dream? Asked Audrey, confused. I'm dreaming? Suddenly her eyes opened and the morning light peeked through the curtains. Oh, goodness, it was all a dream, she wailed. How am I going to find a magical flying hippopotamus now? Audrey sat quietly as she ate her breakfast and played even more quietly with her toys all day. Audrey was thinking of a plan. If I can meet Master Spike in my dream again tonight, maybe he will have found my magical flying hippopotamus. So straight after dinner, she eagerly jumped into bed and kissed the Queen and the King and Prince Lonnie goodnight. Before too long, Audrey saw a familiar sight in the garden. Oh, hello, Master Spike, she called excitedly as she ran towards him. Ah, Princess, he cooed as he swept forward with a gracious bow. How nice to see you again. Well, prompted Audrey, did you find me a magical flying hippopotamus? She stood back, almost too afraid to hear the answer. Kind of, replied Spike as he looked at his feet. You see, he is definitely a hippopotamus and he is definitely magical because he can talk. The only problem is he has kind of lost his confidence a bit on the whole flying thing, had a nasty run-in with a kite and got all tangled up and crashed. It hasn't been quite the same since. So he is magical and he is a hippopotamus and he has just forgotten how to fly? Questioned Audrey. Yes, I think that sums it up pretty well, nodded Spike. Well, I'll just have to remind him. When can I meet him? Audrey could barely contain her excitement. Right now, if you please, he's standing right behind you. Audrey spun around and looked into the biggest, brownest eyes that she had ever seen. They just stood there for a moment, looking at each other. Hippopotamus blinked and shuffled his feet. Hello, Princess, he mumbled. I suppose you've heard about my little problem. Oh, yes, said Audrey. It's not a problem at all. You've just lost your confidence. That happened to me once when I fell off my bike. I thought I would never be able to ride it ever again. But then Dad reminded me that mistakes are just things we learn that don't work. So it's kind of just like a discovery. And if we keep trying, we can literally do anything. Audrey did a little twirl and her dress floated and spun around with her. Grumped Hippopotamus. I don't think it's going to be quite that easy for me. It's a long way to fall when you're flying. Oh, come on now. Don't be all disheartened. What exactly is your name? Audrey paused and looked into his big brown eyes. It's Hippy, he announced. Oh, exclaimed Audrey. Short for hippopotamus? Well, no, said Hippy. It's because I like flowers. And a huge, happy hippopotamus grin spread across his face. And with that, the three new friends went for a lovely walk around the garden. Spike liked the dirt, Hippy smelt all the flowers, and Audrey was deep in thought about how she could remind him how to fly. Together they sat on the hill near the lake and watched the pretty colours of the sky. The sun's going down, observed Hippy. Yes, 'tis indeed, chipped in Spike as he rose to his prickly feet. Time to go. But wait, called Audrey, where are you going? Well, sunset in our world means it's sunrise in your world, explained Spike. We are staying here, but you are waking up, so we will see you again tonight. Audrey blinked in the sunlight and once again realised she was awake and in the world of kings and queens and little brothers and toys and lunchtime. But in this world she also had a clever mum and dad and books and ideas. You are deep in thought today, my princess. A penny for your thoughts," spoke the king as he motioned Audrey to sit on his lap. She climbed up and lay her head on his shoulder and stroked his beard. "Are you troubled by something, my child?" he asked. "Well," began Audrey, "I'm looking for the answer to a problem for a friend. You see, he has forgotten how to do something and now he thinks he can't, but really he can, and I want him to be able to, and it would just be so much fun for all of us, and really I just want him to realise..." She looked up to see the king looking a little confused. "Well," he said, "it sounds like your friend just needs to go back to where the problems began. Maybe then he can sort out where he went wrong." Pondered Audrey. "Maybe that's it. Thanks, Daddy." And she gave him a great big squishy hug. She jumped down and skipped away, singing a little song about a hippopotamus. Soon she caught sight of the Queen, who was having a picnic outside with Prince Lonnie. "What are you up to today, Audrey?" she asked. "Well, I am solving a riddle," she replied, deep in thought. "Oh, let me help," begged the Queen. "I'm so good at riddles." Audrey looked at her intently. "What is the best way to erase a mistake?" Thought the Queen. "That is a tricky one. And really, you know what? There is actually no way to erase them." Audrey's eyes grew wide as she took in the Queen's words. "Not ever?" she questioned in a whisper. "Well, no, not ever," confirmed the Queen. Audrey was just about to become very disheartened when the Queen added, "You don't erase them, you learn from them, and then you go on to bigger and better things." Audrey let the words wash over her like the lapping of the waves at the beach. Suddenly she jumped up and punched her fist into the air. "Yes!" she exclaimed. "I feel like I may have the answers to my riddle." She looked over at Lonnie, who was now busy chasing a butterfly, having completely forgotten about his picnic lunch. He giggled and jumped and laughed without a care in the world. "Just look at that," pronounced the Queen. "When he is doing what he loves, he forgets all his troubles." Just then, a smile crept across Audrey's face. She had a plan. She was so eager to see if it worked, she told the King and Queen she was too tired to eat dinner and went to bed quite early. As she sat with Spike on the bank overlooking the lake, she told him of her plan. "Well, really, I just don't know," he announced. "I suppose it might work, but what happens if it doesn't?" "Well, if it doesn't, we will have discovered another way not to do it," declared Audrey firmly. "Well then, I suppose we must try." Spike rose to his full prickly height and began to amble towards the garden. There he and Audrey collected all the prettiest flowers, blue ones and pink ones and yellow ones, and ones with long stems and ones with beautiful petals, and ones that smelt of the sweetest perfume. They gathered them all up and brought them over to the trampoline in the backyard. Carefully they laid them all on the big black mat. "Now for the test," said Audrey. "Wish me luck," and she trotted off to find Hippy. It wasn't too long before Spike heard the murmur of voices and someone singing a little hippopotamus song. "So what is the surprise?" questioned Hippy. "It's time for you to fly again," pronounced Audrey, throwing her arms out wide to reveal the trampoline covered in flowers. Hippy blinked with his big brown eyes, looking most confused. "How exactly is this supposed to help me to fly again?" he asked. "I am so confused." "Well," began Audrey carefully, "the first thing we need to do is to go back to the day you fell while you were flying." "Oh dear," Hippy sighed. "It was very scary. I was soaring above the kingdom and it was a lovely sunny day. It was also a little bit windy, so some of the children were flying their kites at the park. Very soon I was surrounded by kites and there was no space to fly and I got all tangled up. And before I knew it, I was tumbling down and down and down, then thud, and I hurt my leg and I twisted my tail and I bumped my nose when I fell." He stood with his head down and Audrey could feel his sadness. "Oh, there, Hippy," comforted Audrey, stroking his neck. "My dad said that we just have to go back to where it all started to go wrong and fix it from there. So I would say we have to make sure you don't fly when it's windy. No wind, no kites." And Audrey shrugged her shoulders to signify the end of the problem. "I suppose so," said Hippy in a very small voice, "but it doesn't help me to feel very much like I can fly again." "Of course you can," encouraged Audrey. "You have just discovered something especially important for all magical flying hippopotamuses. Rule number 1, never fly when it is windy. You made an important discovery, and now everyone can go on to bigger and better things, just like my mum said." "Well, I suppose so," said Hippy thoughtfully. "I never saw myself as someone who discovers things before. That makes me, well, quite important, doesn't it?" And he stood a little taller. "It sure does, Hippy," laughed Audrey as she threw her arms around his shiny neck. "Indeed it does, my dear Hippy," agreed Spike as he bowed low and serenely at his feet. "It is an honour to know you, my friend." "But I am still confused as to what all of the flowers are for on the trampoline," questioned Hippy thoughtfully. "Ah," laughed Audrey, "that's the best part. Jump aboard, Hippy." And both she and Spike got behind him and gave him a shove to get him onto the trampoline. He lay there for a moment amongst the flowers, then with a flick of his tail, he gently began to bounce. Small bounces at first, then bigger and bigger and bigger. "Wow, look at all the flowers." Hippy was in paradise. "They are all bouncing with me and they're so pretty, and I just love flowers so much. I love it when they're flying and I forget everything and... Before he knew it, he was soaring above the trampoline and chasing the flowers with a happy smile on his face. It took him quite a while before he came back down to the trampoline where Audrey and Spike had been laying there watching him as he played and twirled and turned circles in the sky. "Oh my, oh my, oh my," he exclaimed as he sat between them. "I do believe this is the best day of my life. Thank you so much for showing me how to find my magic again, dear princess." And his eyes sparkled. "There is just one more thing I need to do to complete my perfect day." He came to stand beside Audrey and bowed down very low. "Would you do me the honour of flying with me?" "Oh, would I?" squealed Audrey in sheer delight. "Yes!" Together they soared above the kingdom, watching the king and queen and Lonnie, who only saw a strange bird flying above them. They flew over the park where there were lots of children playing, but no kites today, and they laughed and sang little hippopotamus songs well into the afternoon. They lay in the field, and Audrey made Hippy a special flower garland to wear around his neck. "This way you will always be surrounded by what you love most, and that means you can fly anywhere," declared Audrey. Hippy just grinned a happy hippopotamus kind of grin and sat watching the sunset. As the sun shone a rainbow of colours across the sky, Audrey remembered that sunset in this world meant sunrise in her own. She yawned and looked up to see the ceiling of her bedroom. She was awake. Audrey walked on a cloud of air all day, knowing where she would be going to each night. And sure enough, each night as she drifted into her dreams, along came Spike and Hippy, and they would laugh and fly and make daisy chains and sing little hippopotamus songs. "I have a secret," shared Hippy as Audrey and Spike turned towards him to listen. "You may have always wanted a magical flying hippopotamus, but I never told anyone that I always wanted my very own princess." And he blushed a little and blinked his eyes. Spike chimed in. I also have a confession to make, he announced. I have always wanted some very special best friends, and although he couldn't really blush, his golden tips glowed pink. Well, laughed Audrey, looks like we all discovered something very important. We did, chorused Hippy and Spike. Yes, smiled Audrey. Dreams really can come true. And they did. If you would like a copy of The Magical Flying Hippopotamus for yourself, you can just head over to abstractions.com.au. See you again soon.